The ruler of Iran before the revolution was Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. He was known to the world simply as the Shah. He envisioned a modern, westernized nation. He wanted Iran to be a powerful, secular state with a strong military. The Shah pushed for rapid industrialization and social reforms. He gave women the right to vote and encouraged Western styles of dress. His White Revolution aimed to transform Iran from a feudal society into a modern industrial power. This grand vision was funded by Iran's immense oil wealth. He built impressive dams, roads, and universities. To many outsiders, Iran looked like a beacon of progress in the Middle East, a close and reliable ally of the United States. However, beneath this shiny surface, deep discontent was brewing. The Shah's reforms often felt forced upon the people. They disrupted traditional ways of life that had existed for centuries. Many deeply religious Iranians saw his secular policies as an attack on their Islamic faith. They disliked the spread of Western culture, which they viewed as corrupt and immoral. The gap between the rich and the poor grew wider and wider. A small, wealthy elite connected to the Shah's court lived in luxury. They enjoyed lavish parties and Western goods. Meanwhile, millions of ordinary Iranians struggled with poverty and felt left behind by the so-called progress. Their traditional values were being eroded by a culture they did not recognize. The Shah's rule was also built on a foundation of fear. He did not tolerate any form of political dissent. His secret police force, known as Savak, was infamous for its brutality. Savak was trained by both the CIA and Israel's Mossad. It had a network of spies and informants everywhere. Anyone who dared to criticize the Shah or his government risked being arrested. They could be imprisoned without trial, tortured, or even executed. This climate of repression silenced many voices, but it did not extinguish the anger. Instead, it pushed opposition underground, where it festered and grew stronger, waiting for an opportunity to erupt. This combination of factors created a perfect storm for revolution. There was economic inequality that left many people feeling hopeless. There was a cultural clash between traditional Islamic values and forced westernization. And there was the brutal political repression that denied people their basic freedoms. Many Iranians felt that the Shah had sold their country's soul to foreign powers, especially the United States. They felt he cared more about pleasing his Western allies than serving his own people. They longed for a leader who would restore their national pride, their religious identity, and their dignity. They were searching for a new path, and a powerful voice was beginning to emerge from exile. The voice that came to unite the opposition belonged to Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. He was a senior Shia cleric and a scholar of Islamic law. Khomeini was a fierce and uncompromising critic of the Shah. He had been forced into exile years earlier for his outspoken opposition. From his base, first in Iraq and later in France, he continued his campaign. He sent messages to his followers in Iran through smuggled cassette tapes. These tapes were copied and distributed secretly throughout the country. In his sermons, Khomeini condemned the Shah's regime as corrupt, un-Islamic, and a puppet of the United States. He called it the Great Satan. Khomeini's message resonated deeply with millions of Iranians. He spoke a language they understood, rooted in faith and justice. To the poor and marginalized, he promised a society where wealth would be shared more equally. To the deeply religious, he promised to restore Islamic values to the center of Iranian life. To nationalists, he promised to end foreign interference and restore Iran's independence. He became a symbol of resistance against a hated ruler. He was not just a political figure, he was seen as a spiritual guide. His charisma and unwavering conviction inspired a mass movement that crossed social classes, uniting religious conservatives, students, and middle-class professionals. By 1978, the protests against the Shah had grown into a full-blown revolution. The streets of Tehran and other major cities filled with massive crowds. People chanted, "Death to the Shah," and "God is great." The Shah's security forces responded with violence, shooting into unarmed crowds and killing hundreds, even thousands. But the bloodshed only fueled the people's anger and determination. Each funeral for a slain protester turned into another massive demonstration. The cycle of protest and repression escalated. The country was grinding to a halt. Strikes paralyzed the oil industry, which was the lifeblood of the Shah's government. The economy collapsed. Facing a total breakdown of his authority, the Shah could no longer hold on to power. His military began to crumble as soldiers refused to fire on their own people. His powerful American allies, seeing his position as hopeless, were unwilling to intervene directly to save him. In January 1979, the Shah fled Iran, never to return. 2 weeks later, Ayatollah Khomeini made a triumphant return from exile. Millions of people poured into the streets of Tehran to welcome him. It was a moment of immense joy and hope for his supporters. A centuries-old monarchy had been toppled. The stage was now set for the creation of a new kind of state, one the world had never seen before. The revolution's leaders moved quickly to reshape Iran. They wanted to create a state based on Khomeini's vision of Islamic governance. This concept was called Velayat-e-Faqih, or the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. A referendum was held, and the people overwhelmingly voted to abolish the monarchy. They chose to establish an Islamic republic. A new constitution was written. It created a unique political system that blended democratic elements like a president and a parliament with theocratic rule. At the very top of this new structure was the supreme leader. This position, first held by Ayatollah Khomeini, had the final say on all matters of state, both religious and political. This transformation profoundly changed daily life in Iran. The new government implemented strict Islamic laws. Women were required to wear the hijab, a veil that covers the hair. Alcohol was banned and Western music was taken off the airwaves. The legal system was overhauled to conform to Islamic Sharia law. Revolutionary guards were formed to defend the new regime and enforce its moral codes. Cultural institutions were purged of Western influences. The revolution was not just a political change, it was a deep social and cultural upheaval. It aimed to create a purely Islamic society, free from what its leaders saw as the corrupting influence of the West. The new government's foreign policy was just as radical as its domestic changes. Khomeini declared that Iran would export its revolution. He wanted to inspire similar Islamic uprisings across the Middle East. This stance immediately put Iran at odds with its neighbors, most of whom were ruled by secular leaders or pro-Western monarchies. The primary target of Iran's hostility, however, became the United States. The revolutionaries viewed America as the main supporter of the Shah's hated regime. They remembered the 1953 coup, where the CIA had helped overthrow a democratically elected leader to restore the Shah to power. This history created deep mistrust and resentment. This animosity exploded into a major international crisis in November 1979. A group of radical students, followers of Khomeini, stormed the United States Embassy in Tehran. They took more than 50 American diplomats and citizens hostage. The students demanded that the United States return the Shah to Iran to stand trial. They also demanded an apology for decades of interference in Iranian affairs. The hostage crisis lasted for 444 agonizing days. It severed diplomatic relations between Iran and the United States completely. For Americans, the nightly images of angry crowds burning United States flags defined their view of the new Iran. For Iranians, it was a bold act of defiance against a superpower. The Iranian Revolution also redrew the political map of the Middle East by creating a new and powerful enemy for Israel. Under the Shah, Iran and Israel had maintained a quiet, pragmatic relationship. They shared intelligence and cooperated on military and economic projects. They were both non-Arab powers in the region and saw a common threat in some of their Arab neighbors. But for Ayatollah Khomeini, this relationship was unacceptable. He viewed Israel's existence as an illegitimate occupation of sacred Islamic land. He saw Israel as a colonial outpost of the West, a little Satan working alongside the great Satan, the United States. This hostility was based on both religious and political grounds. Religiously, Khomeini and his followers believed that Jerusalem, home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque, one of Islam's holiest sites, must be under Muslim control. Politically, they saw the Palestinian cause as a central struggle against Western imperialism. The new Islamic Republic declared its unwavering support for the Palestinians. It cut all ties with Israel and began funding and training anti-Israel militant groups, such as Hezbollah in Lebanon. This turned the old, quiet partnership into an open and bitter rivalry. Iran and Israel became locked in a shadow war that continues to this day, fought through proxies across the region. Inside Iran, the revolution's legacy is complex and contested. For supporters of the regime, it brought true independence from foreign domination. It restored religious values and created a system they believe is just and righteous. They point to Iran's resilience in the face of international sanctions and pressure as proof of the revolution's success. It has survived a brutal 8-year war with Iraq, which was supported by many world powers. It has also made significant scientific and technological advancements, particularly in its controversial nuclear program. To them, the Islamic Republic is a source of national pride and a powerful symbol of resistance. However, for many other Iranians, the promises of the revolution remain unfulfilled. They face economic hardship, made worse by international sanctions and government mismanagement. They live with strict social controls and limited personal freedoms. A new generation has grown up that did not experience the Shah's rule. Many of them yearn for more openness and a better relationship with the outside world. The revolution that began with a unified call for freedom has left behind a society deeply divided. The struggle between theocratic authority and the popular desire for change continues to define Iran's path, shaping its future and its relationship with the rest of the world.